Welcome back to the Wacky, Wonderful, Wise Works podcast. All you guys, gals, geeks, and goofballs. Today, we're going to be talking about the new Hollywood business playbook. Hollywood's changing, movies are changing, audiences are changing, and we're going to be diving into so many aspects around how the industry's changing and what they are doing to calibrate. If you ever wondered, how are movies going from theater releases, big like merchandise, DVD copies, sales, VHS sales, all of this into streaming at home through subscription model, we're going to talk through all that. We got a lot of information to go through, so stick around. Hope you enjoy this podcast. How you doing, Josh?
Did you just hit me with the how you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing? Good. On the pre-show, we did a brief breakdown review of Trapped, that newest M. Night Shyamalan film.
Yes.
That was on the pre-show. So if you guys want to hear us talk about that, you have to go subscribe to the Patreon or become a YouTube member to hear that.
It's only $3.99 a month.
Only $3.99. If you just are curious about, it was like a 30-minute long conversation. We got into it.
We got into it. Yeah. We are fans of Shyamalan, even if we do have criticisms. Even if we do have criticisms of his movies, we are fans and longtime fans of Shyamalan films.
I would say he's probably one of my at least top 5, if not top 3.
Favorite directors?
Yeah.
He used to be for me, and I think he's slowly slipped downward. A couple of his movies will always remain as top 10 favorite movies, probably. I think Signs, for me, is probably in my top 10 easily.
Yeah.
It's just such a good movie with such good performances from Joaquin Phoenix and Mel Gibson. Phoenix.
Yeah. No, yeah, he definitely, I think, because when I was a kid, you're right, watched Signs, and then I watched Sixth Sense, and that caught me off guard. I didn't know the twist because I'd never watched it before, even though it was years after the movie came out. I watched it blindly and fell in love with M. Night as a director. So I definitely think he's in my top. I think he's probably top 3, honestly.
Yeah. That's pretty high up there.
He's got some good movies.
But yeah, if you guys want to see our review of Trap, go check out our Patreon, links in the description, or you can just hit join on the YouTube channel if you're on desktop. However, it comes up on mobile. I don't even think it comes up on mobile, which is weird. I think to join, you have to be on a desktop. I have no idea.
No, you can watch it on mobile. You can watch on mobile if you...
No, you can watch on mobile. I'm talking about joining the channel. I don't know if... Who knows,
You can do the Patreon for mobile, probably.
Oh, definitely. Just get the Patreon app. Anyway, enough about all that. I want to get into the new business model, the new playbook that Hollywood is doing. But before we do all that, we really need to go through a brief history of film distribution, of movie distribution over the years, because it's evolved. And when I was breaking down this information, the evolution is fascinating. It truly is. So let's go ahead and jump into. It's gonna throw a lot of information at you. So buckle up. We're gonna get into a brief history of film and movie distribution over the years, all the way back to the 1920s.
Brief.
All right.
Brief. I'm gonna say
have a bunch of slides here.
Brief.
Okay. So let's see. Early distributions and World War II impact. All right. So 1929, despite the Wall Street crash, 60 through 80 million Americans continue visiting movie theaters weekly. All right. So this is a big deal. Movie theaters was the primary way of getting entertainment at all. All right. back in this time in 1929 and 1930, there was only like in the thousands of people that even had any access to any kind of TV in home. Like it was extremely rare, and broadcast didn't really pop off till like the 40s, all right? Like where it was more mass produced. 1939, cinemas in the UK closed temporarily when World War II was declared, but reopened a week later. So this is just kind of like big moments in cinema distribution. 1941, movie attendances boomed due to leisure activities, bands, and morale-boosting films like the 49th Parallel. I don't know what that movie is or what that even is. I think it's a movie. Films like the 49th Parallel.
Yeah.
But during the war, right, or after the war, people wanted morale boosting. There is also, like, side note, a ton of government CIA propaganda being put out in the cinemas, especially during and post-war. So it was like the way to influence the public, but it was all through theaters. Like theaters are the place. It would be the thing where it's like, go to the Saturday night at the movies. You know what I mean? That old song, Saturday night at the movies. And you go and hand them a nickel. You know what I mean? You give them a nickel and you go watch your movie.
Why do I feel like you hand them a nickel for your movie and then you get your peanuts for some reason?
I'm like eating peanuts while watching
you eat peanuts while watching a movie. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know.
All right, 1946, record-breaking profits as 2/3 of Americans attended movies weekly post World War II. So 2/3, so 2 out of every 3 people were 2 out of every 3 Americans were going to the movies weekly to watch something, right?
I mean, you know, everybody knows you grab your beautiful dame and go have a Saturday night date at the movies.
Who cares what picture you see, man? Just go to the movies, dude. All right. So weekly is the huge. So this is like the peak theater experience. It is not where the most money is because the profits were still figuring it out. But this is the most popular cinema theater experiences have ever been, right? As far as human population to people's butts in the theater. You know what I mean? Like it's never been more popular. Now, there's been more people at the theater as the population has grown, but as far as just straight the amount of the human population you're getting in theaters, this was the peak, right?
I don't want to break down, I don't want to go on a rabbit hole with asking the question, but I'm just going to ask it real quick. This was around the same time that sound started coming into
sound had been around
in pictures, or was it silent before this?
It was black and white.
It was black and white. Still, it was still
the
black
30s.
And white.
The 30s were the 30s and maybe early 40s were kind of some didn't have sound, but by the 40s they had sound. Let me do a quick Google search just to confirm.
I'm just thinking of, you know, Singing in the Rain, that era when, and also everybody, I'm seeing World War II, and I know that was a big time where people were coming back.
Oh, yeah.
I know people were thinking that they weren't as entertained by movies as much because they had seen so much with the war and so much death and stuff that they had to ramp up. And
1927, October 6th of 1927, Warner Bros. Released The Jazz Singer, the first feature-length film to incorporate synchronized sound for sequences of dialogue. All right, so the 20s, we had
10 years off.
Yeah, we had 12 music and dialogue in the theaters, in movies from the 20s, okay?
Late 20s, though.
From the late 20s, from 27. Which we're coming up. In just a few years, we will be at the 100-year anniversary of movies having sound.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fun. That's crazy. We're not even at 100 years of movies having sound yet. So the 60s through the 70s, home video and the format war. All right.
Okay.
So in 1965, Eastman Kodak launched the Super 8 format, enabling home movies making and film playback at home. Okay. The first instance. All right. The first instance. So we're not talking about cable TV. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Which for reference, let me see what year did TV in homes come about? All right. In 1946 to some 12 million, let's see, number of television sets in the use rose from 6,000 in 1946 to 12 million by 1951. And so our dad was born, I believe, in 57, I think, 56 or 57. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so he grew up when he was young into being a teenager. His form of entertainment was black and white cable TV, right?
Yeah, and it's crazy too. This I'm probably behind. It was probably way back before this, but like people didn't have the line from like the cable to come into their house and play a TV. So they literally had to like run a line because that wasn't a thing.
Well,
Yeah.
they had the antenna, right? So they invented the I don't know if it was the rabbit ears, if that's super old technology, or if that was consistent. But there was the antenna because they figured out how to send frequency waves, right, for TV and everything. But yeah, I don't know, man. It would have been crazy to actually just live in those days to understand the intricacies. Right now, we just have to have conversations with older people. But in 65, Kodak created the Super 8 film, which was a big deal because it's the first time that unless you had like a projector system and you bought a really expensive reel that wasn't mass produced, so you got your hands on something special, this is the first time that people were playing back like recorded, like duplicated or recorded stuff that wasn't cable TV. Okay. 1995, Sony released, no, 1975, not 95. 1975, Sony released the Betamax, allowing movie playback and live TV recording. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sparking the home video revolution.
This is interesting. I'm going back a tiny bit, and I don't mean to keep jumping around, but what year did you say cable was coming into people's homes? Like
between 1946 and 1951.
Okay, I was gonna say throw in a little joke in there about I Love Lucy, and that started in 1951 was when I Love Lucy went on air.
Right. Which, by the way, if you guys want to see what a Betamax look like, let's see. This is what it looks like. A Betamax.
Oh yeah.
All right. So that was in 1975. In the late 1970s, JVC launched VHS. We know what that is. VHS, entertaining the market after Betamax and starting the first format war. Okay. So this is when VHS popped into the scene and stuck around until the 2000s. All right. So VHS was the thing for 40 years. It looks that way.
40 years. That's crazy. I mean, we know VHS.
Maybe 30 because late 70s, right? Maybe more like 30 years.
And I know when DVDs started becoming a thing, we were still into the VHS because DVDs would get scratched and they weren't great. That technology took a while for them.
That's why they quickly created Blu-ray.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but also like It's just DVDs weren't great technology.
All right, we're going to get to DVDs. Hold on. All right, so 1978, VHS became the UK's standard for home video. 1979, video rentals and straight-to-video releases boosted profits from Hollywood studios, recouping losses from theater flops. So this is the first time by 1979, putting movies on VHS and getting people's to buy VHS tapes of movies, as well as renting VHS tapes from places like, as we knew, Blockbuster, but most of the time kind of like what you would see on Stranger Things. Steve goes and works at a video rental place. That was the way for Hollywood to recoup losses if a theater experience did not work. So that leads us to the problem we have today, but not quite. We have more to go, but that's reminiscent of this is a issue that is re-showing its head again. You know what I mean?
It's crazy because you have 1978 and 1979, and Star Wars was released 1977.
Yeah.
1 year before. I guess VHS was in the 70s.
This VHS started in the late 70s. So,
77 is when Star Wars came out.
Yeah. So it is Star Wars came out right as VHS is beginning, basically.
Yeah.
All right. So the 1990s. All right. Titanic, VHS dominance and DVD emergence. All right. Titanic premiered staying in theaters for 10 months and launched a 50 million home video campaign. All right, so that means $50 million campaign invested into VHS. All right. 1999 to 2000, Titanic became the first DVD to sell 1 million copies, polarizing DVDs with special features. So Titanic was the big first success for DVD sales as DVDs were being created. All right. So Titanic not only was successful with being the highest grossing film for a long time in theaters, but it also was the first success story to launch the DVD format. All right. 2001, DVD sales overtook VHS. And we remember that. Do you remember that happening?
Yes.
We were there for that, obviously.
We were young. I do remember.
I remember going to Walmart at the age of 6, 7, and 8. All right. I remember seeing.
For us, DVDs, we were getting into DVDs 2003, maybe. Because I remember in 2000, we were really young, but 2002, maybe even 2003 still, we were getting VHS copies of things.
Well, the market still created VHS copies of stuff, right?
Yeah.
The market hadn't stopped VHS yet, just because DVDs were rising in popularity.
Yes.
So I remember going to Walmart, seeing VHS copies and DVD copies of movies,
Yes.
I remember that. I was like 7, but I remember that happening.
I remember
that. And then we get to 2001 to 2007, all right, to the digital shift. So in late 2021, fantasy films dominated the box office, so Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings became major hits. That's kind of a big genre moment for films, and it kind of took us in a big direction going into the early 2000s as far as movies go. And it also kind of shaped what movies were going to be made for the next 2 decades in some capacity. 2006, believe it or not, Apple was the first one. Apple added movies to iTunes, beginning digital film sales. So Apple on iTunes was the first time that a digital movie sale started happening. And it wasn't either in theaters or on VHS or DVDs, right?
Yeah, you
Or
could buy it for your Apple. You could buy it for your Apple Touch. I Apple Touch. Yeah,
iPod.
iPod Touch,
iPod.
and then or your iPod in general. Your small screen. You're like
Yeah.
4x4 screen.
Yeah.
Not even 4x, like 2x2 screen. You could buy
Yeah.
a movie and watch it on there.
Yeah. But they were onto something, man. They knew where the world was going. All right.
Yeah.
By 2007, Netflix introduced streaming, shifting from a DVD subscription service to digital streaming. So if you don't know the history of Netflix, Netflix was like Blockbuster, like a movie DVD rental thing, except they didn't have locations where you go and select. You online, you ordered a rental and it was shipped to you and you had to ship it back. That was how Netflix started. And then Netflix introduced, we are going to start streaming movies like rentals, but you're watching them online rather than us sending you a DVD. Okay.
Yeah.
Which oddly enough, I think it was like in 2000, I think it was 2022. I think it was just like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Netflix officially stopped that service. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
Well, they were
long
trying to
kept
get
that
their
going.
DVDs back. Someone still had DVDs out for
Right,
rent, and
right.
they're waiting for them to send it back so they can collect that.
It took a
that
while.
that fee for you having it so much.
It took a while. 2010s to 2020s. So this is getting right up to where we are today.
Okay.
The streaming competition and COVID-19 impact. All right. Netflix launched its first original content, investing heavily in streaming exclusive. So again, Netflix changed the industry by saying we're not just renting movies digitally to watch online. We're now a studio that makes our own Netflix content, right? That launched every studio into wanting to do the same thing. 2019, all right, Netflix had nearly doubled the subscribers of Amazon Prime with 125 million. So by this time, obviously Amazon Prime, Disney Plus was around by 2019, yeah. Or they started in 2019.
Yeah, it was
No, there was talks because remember we started our podcast right at the beginning of 2019, remember? And we were theorizing what a subscription service for Disney would look like.
They were in talks back in 2017 when I was working at
WBTV. Yeah.
That was a news story that we had. I remember we talked about Disney launching their own,
but it wasn't launched
streaming service. Yeah, till many years later. It
was launched when Mandalorian season 1 was launched because that was the big thing. It all happened at the same time. 2020 COVID-19 accelerated streaming as theaters closed globally. All right. And then 2020's COVID-19 forced a shift towards streaming, leading to questions about cinema's sustainability. So that's the timeline of events. It's a lot, but that is a very basic, brief picture of movie distribution history, all right? And the ebb and flows that it has taken. What I found most interesting about all of this information, and then I want to hear all your thoughts.
Oh, yeah, I've got a lot.
Is the fact that it starts in theaters and ends with, it starts with supremacy of theaters, right? No other option but theaters. Now we're here, we have so many options, even though theaters still exist, we have so many options and theaters are suffering in a lot of ways. So it's literally a complete shift with physical copies living for a while and then being introduced, living for a while, really building a business around banking on those hard digital sales like Hollywood. And then that just falling off a cliff as streaming and digital assets come into play. But it's cool in some capacity that if you're smart, that it comes into the nature of, streaming subscriptions are going to have to be the thing that counters
Mm-hmm.
the loss of physical digital products sold. So meaning
Oh yeah.
no VHS, no DVDs, but you have subscriptions basically. So that money has to counterbalance the loss in the market. And that disrupts the whole business model.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. So what are all your thoughts?
So I want to go back a bit. I was thinking about things as you were going to go back to kind of the shift from DVDs to VHS. And I want to kind of start there because that's what I remember growing up. I was around during this era. And I think something that came into my head that I remember, the way that you were watching DVDs from VHS is there was many different ways of doing it. They had DVD players where you could just stick your DVD in and it would hold it. You could stick like 30 DVDs in or, and
have a library for DVDs.
Yeah. You never had to pull it out of your DVD player because it would hold it for you. And then you could just like flip through all your collection and then watch it. But you could only hold so many. And that's kind of weird because it's kind of like a digital thing, but you have to have the DVD in there, which is interesting. And that
it's a library, but it's still physical products.
Yeah, it's almost like that had to have been like an Apple invention. I don't know who invented that, but that seems very much like something Apple was playing with.
I would say Sony would be more likely to invent something like that.
Maybe. I know. And then skipping forward a little bit where like you could put a movie on like an iPod where you had like the digital copy on an iPod, which was interesting, but then it still came down to storage. Like you only were going to have, a couple gigs on your iPod or your so you could only put a couple movies on there. It wasn't like you were going to put a ton. And
you know what's interesting? You know what happened before? This is crazy. It's so interesting. This is something that wasn't even in the list that should be mentioned. Before Apple started selling the digital versions of movies, digital versions of movies existed on the internet. You know what I mean? Through pirated websites. That's why on all of the DVD sales, they put that stupid ad that's like, you wouldn't steal a purse. You wouldn't steal a television set. You wouldn't steal a DVD. So why would you steal pirated movies? And I know they existed in discs, right? I know they existed
I think people were just literally, I think people were like figuring out a way to copy a disc, the movie on this disc to this disc. And so it wasn't like a digital, so like YouTube was invented around 2005.
Yes. So
videos
online
started kind of becoming a thing.
But anybody,
there was before that.
There was a lot of smart people who you could make a video on your website. Anybody who knew how to do coding or build a website back in 2004, 2005, they were doing it and they were putting movies on their website in video format, just super low quality. And it was pirating, right?
Yeah.
It was happening. It was happening before they started selling digital versions online. They were still streaming online the same way that YouTube was, except it was stolen and it was really low quality and people did not have good internet until around 2005, 2004. It was good internet. Didn't exist. It was all dial up. So people didn't even really watch it because it would take too long to buffer and all the issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Going forward a little bit after that, I remember, and this is weird to say, but I remember watching the first movie I ever watched. I had watched YouTube. We had the YouTube thing, but we were still heavily into DVDs. And I remember the first thing I ever watched on Netflix.
Oh.
I remember the place when I was watching, and it's weird, but I remember watching it and being like, this is crazy. This is going to be the next thing. This is not a DVD copy of something. This is you pick whatever.
But why was that so crazy? Because you had already been watching YouTube for a few years at that point. Why was it such a crazy idea?
Something about it not
opening up an app.
Yeah, opening up an app all that's already installed on your TV and not like a
website computer.
Yeah, or even like, or having to put a DVD in or anything. It was just, I don't know. It was weird seeing it on your TV and not on your computer.
What was the first movie you watched on Netflix?
It was Shaun the Sheep.
Shaun the Sheep.
Shaun the Sheep.
Where did you watch it? Whose friend's house?
I remember we went over this. It had to have been like 2007, 2008, because it was pretty early on when Netflix first came out. When did Netflix come out? What do you mean?
In 2007, Netflix introduced streaming, right?
Yes. So it had to have been like 2008, probably.
Okay.
I remember we went over to the Stories.
Okay. And Stories had Netflix.
They were watching, they had Netflix and they turned on Shaun the Sheep. I know our parents didn't have high-speed internet for a long time, so they couldn't watch.
We could barely watch YouTube at our parents' house.
Yeah, the streaming was not happening at our parents for a long time. And then I remember there was kind of a couple original things coming out, but I remember Stranger Things was kind of the
Stranger Things came in like 2014.
I know it was quite a while after I had watched a couple Netflix things, but that was kind of the turning point for me where I remember thinking I want to watch
full on.
Well, not full on. It wasn't full on yet. It still wasn't full on. It wasn't full frontal. It was it was I want to watch this show, but there's no way of me watching it until it's like the movie theater thing. Because I was doing the theaters a lot. I was in high school, going and watching all the Avengers at the
theater hopping, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was doing that too. But I was watching a lot of movies at the theater, all the new Marvel movies, and I
paying for one and watching 10 throughout the day.
Yeah, but I knew I couldn't go to the theater and watch it, and there was not really a chance of watching Stranger Things on DVD, except for after it had been on Netflix for quite a while, they would release a DVD copy of it. That at that point, it was still early on to where DVDs were still selling, to where they would sell a packet with the whole season on a couple of DVDs.
Yeah.
But that was like a year after it had been on Netflix. They wouldn't release it. It was quite a while. And so that was kind of the turning point for me, even though there had been a lot of Netflix stuff where I'm like, I've got to get to this streaming thing because they're starting to do originals. Where if I don't get on Netflix, then I'm not going to be able to.
You're going to miss out, right?
Yes.
That was that I can't remember the first thing on Netflix I watched. It was definitely a movie, and it was definitely a movie I probably had already watched on DVD. You know what I mean? I do remember when House of Cards craze was coming out, because that was like that was the big thing, like the first exclusive Netflix thing. They had already been doing rentals, like the subscription model, and getting contracts, The Office, everything was already on there. People were watching legacy shows and movies, but then they dropped House of Cards and it was like just on Netflix. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when they started doing the originals, which I believe it said 2013. Yeah. And then Stranger Things came soon after that. I believe in either might have been actually like 15 or 16. I think Stranger Things came out.
No, your timeline keeps moving up, because I remember it was pretty early when it was a long time ago when I was watching Stranger Things, and
I'm pretty sure it was 16, dude. I think season 1 came out in 16.
No.
Yeah.
I was not graduated yet, my guy.
All right. Well, with all of this, the shift has been dramatic. And so this leads me to want to talk a little bit about money. But before we talk about money, I want to do a quick shout out. Libya Mazura. All right. Thank you so much for being a YouTube member. It means a whole lot that you are supporting us and that you have believed in us and that you are getting your exclusive content and exclusive perks from us. But we're here to thank you for supporting us. If you want to support us the same way that Libya does support us, it's only $3.99 a month. You get podcasts early as well as exclusive pre-shows that we put out. We also do your name in the credits of every video on the channel, as well as rotations of personal shout outs on podcasts, just like Libya has. So thank you so much for your support. Consider supporting us. You get your name in the videos, and it's super helpful, and it's super cheap, $3.99 a month. We really would appreciate it.
Yes.
So getting into the talk about money, how streaming numbers compare to movie sales, movie tickets, right? The movie,
yeah.
the moving of the movies through the theaters, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And when all of these numbers, I wanted to look at complete years. So although we are almost done with the year of 2024, we are going to look at the year of 2023's numbers, okay? There was some big successes in both streaming and theaters last year, right? You had the Barbenheimer thing last year and all that. So we're going to look at a relatively successful post-COVID theater year, as well as a successful post-COVID streamer year, 2023, okay? So let's go through this. Started with Disney. I wanted to do an apples to apples kind of thing. Disney Plus, so the streaming service, generated $8.4 billion in revenue in 2023, okay? Disney made $4.8 billion in theaters globally in 2023. So if you look at that number, Disney Plus generated the company Disney almost twice as much as their theatrical box office, right? Which in some ways is very interesting. As I kind of said before earlier in the podcast, when DVDs and VHS and Blu-rays, although they still exist, have kind of died as an industry, they don't earn money the way that they used to. The industry, Hollywood industry, has to counteract that loss. And the way to do that is to get subscriptions for your content, Disney Plus, right? And so the question is, do you think that, has it always been a part of the industry for people like Disney or companies like Disney to make close to twice the amount of money a year from like VHS or DVD sales, like hard copy sales, as what they made during theaters for an entire year, right? Globally. Do you think that's common for that to be higher earning than theatrical runs?
Yeah, probably. But also, like, the first thing that comes to my mind when we're thinking like streaming revenue and theater revenue.
Okay.
And I don't know where you got these numbers specifically and what
multiple sources, and I cross-referenced them with multiple websites, so they're correct.
Where what this entails, because like, you know, some people get back end money, like actors and people get back end money from theater releases and stuff, but they're not getting back end from streaming money. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So do they have to shell out more money
This
for
is what
theater
they
releases
earned.
or for
This is gross earnings.
on the the platform, they basically get all the money for that because
This is gross earnings though. So both with theater and with the Disney Plus, this is gross. So obviously this money is going to be put towards either paying royalties or paying, for new projects. Obviously this money is going to be used. This isn't net profit. This is gross earnings. All right. And I'm just saying that the gross earning of Disney Plus is almost double what the entire theatrical global run was for 2023 for Disney.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is the next two numbers. So Warner Bros., as we saw, Warner Bros. Was the very first movie to put sound in movies. All right. So they're an old company. They've been around for almost, I guess, maybe more, maybe 100 years, I guess, at this point. And globally, last year, Warner Bros. Earned $1.4 billion in theaters. So they didn't earn as much as Disney. And the only streaming service that Warner Brothers has that they primarily use is Max, previously known as HBO Max. All right. That is the Warner Brothers streaming service. And HBO Max for 2023 only earned $449 million. So it is less than half of what their theatrical earnings were.
One third of it.
And it all comes down to how many people are willing to subscribe to your platform, right? I think that Max has probably moved the needle in a big way in 2024. I think they've probably gotten a lot more subscriptions, especially with Disney being so rough, all right now, and Disney relying on their catalog of old content to make the sale.
Yeah.
Whereas Max is actually creating really good new stuff that people are interested in.
And they also, I don't know if this might have been 2022. I don't remember. But they made a big push of going from HBO Max to Max.
Yeah.
They changed their platform to just be Max over HBO Max. And
part of that is because they're also putting reality shows. They combined like Discovery. Warner Bros. Discovery is also a part of it. They didn't want to be labeled as HBO because HBO has that adult television label to it. Saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's a big jump to kind of be like, we're making moves. We're doing more with this platform to make it an all-around platform.
It became Max at the end of 2023, I believe, is when it became Max. So
only?
Yeah.
That was a little weird.
Only? Maybe summer of 2023 is when it shifted. But yeah, so HBO or Max is still growing in popularity and has always been kind of seen since they started the streaming service, which is primarily for TV shows and stuff, but it was more HBO branded, which means it was adult branded, which is why it has a lower subscription model, because it has to build up its reputation that families can watch this. It's not just all adult shows, right? And when I say adult shows, I'm just meaning mature shows, right? Now, this is a really crazy statistic, okay? This is probably going to blow your mind.
So May 23rd, 2023.
So I was right. Sort of
HBO Max was rebranded to Max.
So I was right. The summer of 2023, right?
May. That's a little bit
the summer. The summer. They were making the shift during the summer. That's my memory served me correctly. All right. This is a pretty crazy statistic. Now, we've talked about how Netflix, because they were the first to everything when it came to streaming, they are by far the kings of money when it comes to subscribers. They have double Disney Plus, all right?
Okay.
and they have a much larger global audience. All right. And they also, I think, are a bit more pricey at this point because they've risen their prices a little bit. So in 2023, Netflix earned globally, mind you, so this is every Netflix in every country,
Mm-hmm.
$33.72 billion.
Mm-hmm.
The entire global box office for every movie in theaters for 2023 was $33.9 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So Netflix just getting money through people subscribed to their platform, paying monthly for access to their catalog, all right, makes the equivalent of the entire global theatrical run of every single movie.
Yeah.
And why I compare these two is because almost every entertainment studio in Hollywood had theater movies in 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, Universal, everybody. And they all have their own outlet for streaming services, okay? But Netflix did not have one theatrical release in 2023. Everything on Netflix up to this point
Went straight
is
to Netflix.
internal, straight to streaming. And Netflix, as a company, a standalone company, made the same amount as the entire global theatrical run for all of the studios combined.
I mean, it definitely, these numbers definitely make sense. And that's why people like Jeff Bezos is wanting to release the, like, I just lost Jake Gyllenhaal. He's a bouncer. What is that movie?
Roadhouse.
Roadhouse. They begged him to put it in theaters, and he said, "No, we're going straight to platform, and that's how we're doing it." He's seeing the numbers, and he knows that that's how they have to do it to get their platform to make that much money.
Right.
But
looking at all of these
that's
numbers,
crazy because I have not watched, and I'm not lying about this. I'm trying to think the last thing that I watched on Netflix. Okay, no, I peaked at Joe Rogan's special that came out. But besides the Joe Rogan special, it has been probably over a year, two since I've been on Netflix.
You just don't watch stuff on Netflix.
I do not watch Netflix. I'll watch Max, and I like Max. I think Max is a better app. It's easier to find things.
Well, they have more movies over.
They have more
Max,
movies,
right?
but also the shows. I like the shows that are on there too. And
well,
it's
also think about this. Think about this. Max has the traditional movies. All right.
Yeah.
So if a movie was in theaters, it's going to show up on places like Paramount, Max, and Disney Plus, right?
Yeah.
Or Peacock. All of the movies on Netflix, not all of them, because they still do contracts where they have stuff on their platform that's not Netflix originals. But most of the time, the really big theater movies that we're doing trailer reactions to, all of that, you know what I mean? That was all theater movies that went to streaming, and most of the time, those do not end up on Netflix. All of the movies on Netflix, or at least a majority of them, are the Netflix original films, which they dropped a trailer on their YouTube channel, but there wasn't, and social media and everything, but there wasn't any big theatrical marketing push like a lot of the movies do. So when you say you prefer Max, I think it's because it's where a lot of the movies are that you're expecting and seeing trailers for and seeing the marketing campaign for and the theater run for. Whereas Netflix doesn't have all that. They just drop it on their platform. You know what I mean?
And it's, I I know there's stuff on there that's exclusively on these platforms, but like, where's Peacock? Where's Apple TV? And they've
Well,
got
look,
good stuff on there, but like nobody's even talking about it. I feel
Peacock
like.
is Universal's, so that's why. That's why. Like, I think all of the DreamWorks stuff goes to Peacock, right?
Yeah, I think so. The
As
only
well as, The Office, all of those really popular shows that came out of the Universal
yeah,
Studios,
the
and
only thing
so that's
that
why they're on Peacock now.
I definitely have not watched anything on Peacock since probably the last Psych movie that came out on there. But the only thing I miss, and I wish they didn't only have it on Peacock, would be Parks and Rec, because that was a fun bingeable show that was like The Office that I enjoyed. That was like, just put it on in the background. Parks
You're
and
just gonna
Rec.
have to pay for all of them, man.
Nah,
You're just gonna have to pay
Nah.
for all of them.
I will not be a slave to the system.
It just replaced all these streaming services. Just replaced cable, because by the time you pay for all of them, you're spending about $60 to $70 for all of them combined, which is the same cost as like cable, back in the day, or I guess still today, people still have cable, but it just replaced cable if you have access to all of them. So all of this is to show that even from last year, as we are coming to the end of another year, last year, the numbers of streaming are outweighing or in direct competition to theatrical films, right?
Mhm.
So there is still big business with streaming. Streaming should not kill the industry. As much as all of the articles, so many different places are like, oh, COVID is disrupting everything. It disrupted the theater experience. Yes, it did, but it did not disrupt Hollywood, because Netflix is better than ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have to question theater releases though, because like even when and I know it had some controversy around it, but like we went and watched Folie à Deux, and we watched it on like opening weekend, pretty new. So the negative hype around the movie was not really out yet when we went and watched it, but there was probably
second week.
Well, I know, but I'm saying when we went and saw it, I'm trying to bring up, there was only like, I think 10 people in the theater with us. Like there was probably, us and like 2 other couples.
For opening weekend.
And we went to a later showing because we had to go when MJ got off work, but it still was like a Saturday at like 9:00. There should be people there wanting to watch movies at the theater, and we got 10 people in there, maybe. Yeah. If that.
People's preference is to, and also people are turning their living room into dang theaters these days.
Oh, yeah.
I just heard that the 70-inch is out of style and the 90-inch is the new thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a 90-inch is a dang wall. It's bigger than the wall in front of me.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of, we're getting theaters at home, right? And so of course people are like, why would I go to the movie theater? I don't want to sit next to, the overweight smelly guy who's eating his popcorn too loud, when I can have basically the same experience right here in my living room,
Yeah.
And I mean, for Netflix, that's great because they go straight to streaming, and people, as long as they keep putting out content that doesn't completely frustrate the audience, they're not going to cancel their subscription, and they're just going to keep that money train rolling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Disney does not quite know how to operate, I guess, on $8.4 billion, right?
Yeah.
In streaming. They are wanting to look more like the $33 billion in streaming, but you're like 100 million subscribers less than Netflix, like Disney Plus is, right? They have a lot of catching up to do, and people are not fully invested in Disney Plus. whereas they have been because they're more legacy with Netflix. So I'm just saying the new playbook, right?
Mhm.
Getting back to like the title, the new business playbook is 100% streaming. This is no secret. The problem is looking at the numbers. The numbers work. The numbers are good. Hollywood can
Numbers
live
good.
off of the streaming numbers. Netflix is proving it. And Max in some way is also proving it, just on a smaller scale. The problem is Disney is struggling because they're bloated, and there's all of this screaming about the theaters are going away, the theaters don't make money, the theaters are going to destroy the industry, and it's like, stop. They're not. The industry is pivoting, and there are growing pains, and theaters are at large scale are not necessarily a part of that future like they have been since the 20s as we went through the timeline. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But that doesn't mean the industry's going away. The entertainment business has plenty of money. You just need to be creating the right stuff. Netflix is proving that. And Max is proving that with how much positive press they've gotten, Warner Brothers, in their their shows recently, you know, with House of the Dragon, with the new Penguin show. They're getting a lot of love right now because they're doing things right. And so I think it's just a lot of propaganda to say, like, if theaters die, Hollywood dies. That's just not true.
No, definitely
it's just not true. Maybe Disney might struggle. Like, Disney's going to downsize a lot, right, if they don't figure something out. But it's just Disney. There's a lot of other aspects to this that work.
I hate to. I think you might have said this, and we've probably definitely talked about this before, where I think if theaters completely die, I think we will see more of a creator-based platforms. There'll be, you know, some of these bigger companies will die off, and then we will see more of, you know, this creator sold their product to Netflix. It's like I know this is not movies, but it's like Spotify has their original podcasts that you go to. They paid a bunch of money for Joe Rogan to be exclusively on their platform.
It's kind of like the YouTube Red thing, you know, from a handful of years back. Yeah.
I think that if theaters die, I'm thinking that's more of what we're going to see, where, like, you know, huge shows like The Chosen, they have their own app, but also, like, would it be more profitable for somebody to create a show like The Chosen and then choose a platform to put it on and get paid by that platform? So it just becomes a platform-based, you get paid one fee by the platform, or even the platform has to change up their how they run things, of like, you get a flat fee for putting it on your platform, but then you get X more money if it meets the numbers, and you get to know this more of the back end numbers of things, of like, if your product is going to make a bunch of get more views.
I think Netflix has ambitions to be honest, I think YouTube is trying to take the creator economy. Did you watch that recent Colin and Samir video?
Yeah.
I think YouTube is not going to change the creator economy in any way. I think it's going to get better, but they are going to motivate and nudge creators to make more cinematic entertainment type content. Like, it's not going to ever be just that, but there's going to be a heavy nudge to prioritize that in a lot of ways. So it's going to look more like, you know, personality-based reality content like you might see on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Or like reality TV, but different. It's going to be YouTube culture. Vice versa. Netflix is shifting towards the creator economy in a lot of ways as well. And there's probably going to be a mix right in the middle where You have YouTube and Netflix that their content, at least their top priority content, looks similar.
Mm-hmm.
However, one's going to have its foot firmly in the creator economy, while the other is going to have its foot in the Hollywood studio economy, right? But their content's going to overlap. So you're going to have one, like, comedian have a special on Netflix, and the next year they're going to put it on YouTube, and maybe the next year it's on Netflix again. Like, you see it, that already happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Netflix is investing in projects like that, which is, it's cool to see, but we're also seeing like the rest of the Hollywood industry is still very much behind. And Netflix is actually moving the Hollywood industry faster where it wants to go, which looks more like YouTube in some capacity, because YouTube crushes, like, open source people entertaining other people on large and small scale is the future of entertainment, right?
How do you think that's going to affect like these play by ad platforms like Tubi and Freevee? Do you think that's going to change?
They're just gonna they'll just remain the same because that's the YouTube model.
So Tubi is, I don't know who owns Tubi. I'm pretty sure it's another platform, but I think
Tubi's owned by Amazon Prime. I think Amazon owns Tubi.
Freevee's owned by Amazon Prime.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
This is why, because you can, like, The Boys. The Boys is an original show by Amazon Prime, and right now you can go on Freevee and watch the first season of The Boys for free with ads. Right. But if you want to watch the rest of it, you have to go to Amazon Prime, which is kind of interesting that they're doing that. They're putting some of their stuff on the free platform, but then it kind of entices you to go to the paid platform.
But the question is, how large of an audience is actually on those free platforms? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I will go on them here and there because there is some things that come up once in a while on those platforms, and I'm like, I want to watch this, but I don't know.
I just think that those free things, they're going to probably figure out how to integrate and be like, okay, well, maybe it's better to keep it under our roof, or maybe we might just move it to YouTube because there's more eyeballs and we can get more people from YouTube to our platform easier without that extra step of, like, Freevee doesn't really bring in new people. You know what I mean? Like, it's very possible that's the case. So, the industry's kind of doing this. There's always going to be a line, like a distinguishing line between the two. But right now, they're so different. But they're slowly working towards where they're like cousins and holding hands, right?
Yeah.
And they have to, because they see that YouTube's numbers dwarf any other thing in history. Like,
I think it's interesting. I don't think this is bigger than just Hollywood, if we want to use those words, though, because, like, even like this, we were talking about Trump a little bit on the pre-show, not a lot, but like Trump has been doing interviews on podcasts when, like, back in the day, 10 years ago, we would only see these politicians going on like TV-based news interviews and debates and stuff. But now these candidates are going on creators, literally,
the
like
internet.
Theo Vaughn. Yeah. Like Theo Vaughn in his house started a show, a podcast, and it got big enough to where Trump literally had to go to Theo Vaughn's house and sit on.
No, Theo went somewhere to him.
Okay, maybe. But
yeah.
Okay, I'm using that as an example though. Like, a big name creator has to go to Theo Vaughn to his house and, like, be on his platform to be on his podcast. Like, that's not just Hollywood. It's kind of all merging together somehow.
Well, the thing is, Hollywood has been an entertainment. Like, they've for the whole time, go back to the 20s, 40s, and 30s, right? Mm-hmm. It said Hollywood held the attention of the people, 2 out of every 3 people were in the theater every single week. All right.
Yeah.
So the Hollywood has been in the we capitalize on people's attention business. All right. And they do that through entertaining people. They make money by keeping your attention and paying for them to keep your attention. Okay. Because people want distractions. People want their attention distracted and so they do that through entertainment. It's not just it. So why is the biggest competitor to that industry that has for the past 100 years been the monopoly of keeping people's attention is how do you compete with that? Well, it's the entire world has to be given access to compete with that, which they have.
Yeah.
YouTube is open to anybody who wants to start a channel and grow an audience. All right. Which means the entire world, in every niche, in every category, in every possible scenario, in a combination of every possible scenario, people can be cooking dinner while talking about Harry Potter. You know what I mean? Like, or talk about their favorite books while they cook. Like every scenario, and it's not all done. So the market is still open for fresh ideas, but it's the entire world has competed and broken the attention that this industry has had the monopoly on for so long. And the only way for them to stay is to do what Netflix is doing, is stream to make themselves available like YouTube has done from its inception, and get more people, like figure out how to stay as a subscription service studio that retains control of the content, but is open source enough to have that level of the world competition, which is why the joke in Hollywood is like, or the joke on Rick and Morty, it's like selling a show to Netflix is a very achievable goal. You know what I mean? Do you remember that episode? Because it's kind of like, it's a joke on Rick and Morty. It's because it's like, yeah, they're trying a bunch of stuff and they're opening the door to a lot of people that previously the door would be closed to, because they understand in order for us to compete, we have to get people. We have to get their fresh ideas. We have to get it on our platform. The way that YouTube can get anybody, we have to have some level of openness to anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's just the way it has to be. You can't have this closed boardroom thing that competes with the rest of the world. You just can't, right?
I don't have anything else.
I did want to hit this one thing before we go. All right.
Let's hit it. I got my
It's
hammer.
actually super cool. All right. So streamers, with all this talk about streaming, all right, the question comes into play. Actors have always made a large amount of money off of royalties. You know what I mean? Like if their movies do well, how do they become more rich and famous? That's the part. And the business model has always worked to say, if the movie makes a lot of money, we get to pay you a lot more money afterward, right? Because you're the star of the movie, right? So with streaming, where you pay, and even if the show is a really big success, it's not necessarily that specific show is not bringing in more money necessarily to the company. It might get more people to subscribe monthly to the service, right? But then they're just locked in until they decide to cancel. So the question of success and equaling payment on streaming platforms with a subscription model has come into question on how do the stars get paid to compete with the money lost from the old model failing, right?
Yeah.
So I want to just break this down real quick. Why are streamers changing the pay structure? At the beginning of the streaming era, stars were paid a lot of money up front. The thinking was that since they would get no box office reward for being in one of these movies, they should be paid out now. Okay, that's a logical thought, right?
Makes sense.
However, that wasn't always working. Well, a lot of streaming movies didn't become hits, correct? So they weren't very popular, even though they had a star. Kevin Hart is in a lot of those, right? And yet, stars were paid still. Were still paid. According to a Bloomberg report, Apple has already met with high-ranking talent reps to propose a new way to pay actors in these roles in order to level the playing field. So basically, you're rewarded based on the success, not based on we're just going to give you a bunch of money, even if whether the movie flops or not, or the show flops or not. Okay. So what's the new proposal? All right. The details of leaked Apple's deal is that talents will receive performance-based bonuses determined by a point system.
Kind of what I just said.
Kind of. A point system. The points awarded will be based on 3 factors. New subscriber acquisitions, all right? So if this show or this film, which you can do that through link tracking, right? This specific show brings in new subscribers to a specific streamer, like new monthly subscribers, then that's a point in some capacity, all right? Yeah. The other 2 points, oh goodness, what is that? The other 2 points, total watch time, the cumulative amount of time viewers spent watching the show, all right? And then cost efficiency, the show's production cost relative to the size of its audience, all right? So the talent involved in the top 3 highest scoring shows will be eligible to share a bonus pool of up to like 10.5 million per season, okay? So that's like an example. So basically, instead of going on the old model, which is royalties based on success at the theater, the box office, and a reward, we're moving to a point system that combines of, did it bring in new subscribers? What is the what's the total watch hours? And the cost efficiency. So the show's production cost relative to the size of the audience. So did it get a lot of exposure compared to how big was the production and marketing for this thing? So that's how they're gonna. And it's I guess it's an equation. I guess it's an equation of those 3 things that comes out to an amount of how much these stars earn. But we will see.
Yeah, it makes sense because they have to, with us kind of stepping away from theaters a little bit and being more on streaming services, they have to figure out something for these creators, or they're not going to, like Netflix, where you're saying that they're dabbling in, like, people sell their stuff to Netflix, and if they want the best, the newest and best content to come to them, to be on their platform, like, let's say there's a documentary for, something that's hot right now. If Netflix wants that, they have to have an incentive for the creator to sell it to Netflix.
Correct.
And not to this platform. So
Right. And this is kind of Apple's thing. This is going to shift. If the point system works, maybe other streamers will adopt it. But it does seem to be the beginning stages of solving the problem of saying we can't predict the future. We don't know if this is going to be a big success in the streaming world. And if it's not, we can't be wasting money on giving these stars so much money up front on our best guess that this is going to be a success in the streaming world. Because if it is not a success in the streaming world, it doesn't bring any more new money, right? And it might not even be that popular to warrant the budget that it had.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a pool where you flush money down into it. And so in order to stop that, it's to say, let's make a more modest, fair salary for actors, and then we're going to have a point system based on streaming popularity of the after bonuses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll see how this turns out. I'm probably keep a little bit of a pulse on it because I'm curious. I think this has been a big episode of the new playbook, the new business playbook for Hollywood. It's looking in the past, looking to the future, looking to the present, and all of it is shifting. It's shifting in the right direction, as we've discussed. However, these are big growing pains that some of the more legacy companies have yet to figure out the right process. And any final thoughts you have, Joshua?
No, we gotta keep doing stuff. And
The indie market, by the way, indie market's going to be blowing up.
Oh yeah,
So-
we've definitely been seeing that with things like The Chosen, and I wouldn't consider that an indie market anymore, but it kind of is in indie market.
Look, on some level, YouTube channels are the indie market. It's just kind of like a version of the indie market, because it's the indie entertainment market is YouTube, right? So
Yeah.
if you want to be if you want to be a filmmaker, just start a YouTube channel and start growing and figuring out how to be popular on YouTube using films, storytelling, right? The traditional way of cinema entertainment, and you can pursue pretty much any career through the video format in the indie market. And the indie market is basically YouTube, and it's going to continue to blow up. You're right. The Chosen is a recent example of that. Look, Mr. Beast is the ultimate indie example, right? You got to say Mr. Beast, he's just a guy from North Carolina. And although he has like a lot of controversy right now, he's in the indie entertainment market, and he is the example where he is making probably billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
So you just can't have regularly over 100 million views for every video you put out and not be making that kind of money. And that's it. That's all I have. Pay attention, keep your eyes open, and it'll be pretty fun as we continue to be entertained by this industry.